Hi there, and welcome to the pre-departure orientation for the March 2019 Graduate Studies Abroad program. This is Erin Kehoe, the Study Abroad Coordinator at LAM, and I'm really excited to be here today to give you some important information that you'll need to know before your departure to the UK in just a couple of weeks. I completely understand that this presentation is a little bit lengthy. Since I'm just starting the recording, I'm not exactly sure how long it will be, but my guess will be around 40 or 45 minutes. But please be sure to watch the whole thing. It does have a lot of really important details that you'll need to know in order to be prepared for your program. So what will I cover? I will go over health and safety abroad. I'll then move into your role as an ambassador while you're abroad, a representative for LAM College, behavioral expectations, and then some more practical logistical details like packing tips, money, electronics and email, the reentry process, and at the very end, a little bit about FERPA and power of attorney. So as you have probably heard me say during the pre-departure or, the information sessions that I held prior to you applying to this program, your health and safety, just like the health and safety of every other LAM student who goes overseas, is our #1 priority while you're abroad. The college has a whole set of procedures in place to help make sure that you do stay healthy and safe while you're overseas. These procedures involve me, other LAM staff and administrators, up to and including the president of the college, as well as International SOS, which is a third-party organization that I'll talk a little bit more about in a couple of slides. If you or your family are interested in getting more information about general health and safety overseas, particularly in the UK, some really good resources to look at are the State Department and International SOS. I always like to caution students to be cautious about relying on the media when you're looking for objective information about the safety situation abroad. That's not to malign the media, but typically, they're interested in reporting on kind of the absolute worst cases, whether it's crimes or violence or health issues abroad. They're not really reporting on the day-to-day normal, boring stuff that happens when things go fine. So again, if we relied on the media, we might be tempted to think of every other country around the world as a really dangerous, scary place. But the reality is that for most countries, especially for the UK, the day-to-day is very calm, very safe, very much like the United States. Again, really the State Department and International SOS are great resources for getting an objective viewpoint on that. So with all that being said, there is always the chance that there could be an emergency in the UK while you're abroad. So here are the steps that you should follow. First and foremost, you should follow the instructions of local police and emergency forces. If necessary, you should shelter in place wherever you are, but as soon as possible, you should return to your hostel. That will be your central meeting point and the central meeting point of your whole group. The faculty leaders will reach out to you through WhatsApp as soon as they hear of any emergency. So make sure that you are checking your phone, that you're getting on Wi-Fi if you don't have a data plan, and that you're checking for those messages and staying in communication with your faculty leaders. Your faculty will help coordinate the next steps of the group in conjunction with LAM administration as well as International SOS. And also, this probably goes without saying, but please be sure to contact your family as soon as possible. If there is an emergency, just to let them know that you're fine, because they will likely be worried about you if they don't hear from you. So there are a couple of resources that we have in place to, again, give you the information that you need to stay safe while you're abroad, and also to help us if there is an emergency. The first is the Department of State's STEP program. So the STEP program is a way for the State Department to find out which American citizens are overseas at what time and where they are. So we require that you register with the Department of State through their STEP program. When you do so, it'll ask for your personal details, and the details of your travel. So when will you be arriving, where are you going, and when will you be departing? Please complete this process, and I will send you an email with more information on how to do so and the exact process for how to do so. But please complete this process by Monday, March 4th, and email me a screenshot of the confirmation page so that I know that you have done so. So once you're registered with this service, you'll get important information from the British Embassy about, well, the US Embassy in Britain, about safety conditions in the UK. If there is an emergency, they'll send you an alert about that. And this also helps the US Embassy contact you if there is any sort of emergency while our group is abroad. So if we need their assistance, this will help facilitate that process. So the other service that we use is called International SOS. So International SOS is a third-party travel risk management company. The college partners with them. We basically pay a membership fee, and then we pass the membership benefits on to all of our student travelers. So as a student traveler, you have access to all of International SOS's resources completely free of charge. How might you use these services? You can do so in a variety of ways. So for example, before you travel, before you leave for the UK, you could call them to ask about whether there are any particular vaccinations that you need for the country you're traveling to. If you're bringing prescription medicine with you, you should call International SOS to make sure that there are no issues with you carrying that across the border, because sometimes there are differences in levels of legality with medication that's prescribed commonly in the US, potentially being illegal abroad. So there are certain steps that you would need to take to bring that with you. And you can also call them just to check and see if there are any risks in the location you're going to that you should be aware of. And also you can sign up for their alert emails, which I will be showing you very shortly. While you're abroad, you could contact International SOS again for a whole variety of reasons. If you needed health, safety, or security advice, so again, if there was an emergency in London, perhaps you're separated from the group, you're not sure what to do, you can contact International SOS for up-to-the-minute advice. If you need to speak with a doctor, they have doctors on staff that you can speak to by phone. They also provide emotional support counseling by phone or by video call, so that's a really good resource to use if you're feeling, overwhelmed while you're abroad and just need some extra support. If you need to find a local doctor or other provider, they can help connect you with them. If you needed medication while you were abroad, you could also contact them, though likely for a program of this length, you'll just be bringing whatever you need. And then if you lose your travel documents, so if you lose your passport, they can also assist. If an emergency happens, you can call International SOS right away to arrange medical transportation or care, to help provide advice on your condition, how you should proceed, to also assist with evacuation if necessary, to provide help if your safety is at risk, and to contact family members. So again, if something really serious goes on, International SOS should be your very first call. So how can you reach ISOS? You can chat to an ISOS representative through their app. It's called the Assistance app, and you can download it either to Android or to iPhone, and I strongly encourage that everybody do that because it has a lot of great features. They also have a hotline number, which is on the International SOS membership card that I will be emailing you, and it's important to keep a copy of that card with you. You can either print it or keep a digital copy so that you have the hotline number and so that you have the membership number. I also always suggest creating a contact in your phone with the International SOS contact information so that you just have it on hand. And you can also call using a button within their app, which makes things very easy. And finally, they do have a membership website that you can get to at internationalsos.com, where you can view travel and security information for different countries around the world, including the UK. So one of these services that we use through International SOS is called the My Trips system. It's mandatory for all students to register their travel within My Trips. I'm going to send you an email with instructions on how to do so. You'll want to make sure that you add your arrival flight, departing flight, and accommodation. And once you do so, you'll automatically get an email from ISOS with health and safety information about the UK specifically. So please review that carefully. It is important information to have in mind before you travel. And again, please complete this step by Monday, March 4th as well. No need to email me about it because I can go in behind the scenes and see who has done so and who has not. And again, a common issue that I see is that students will create an account but then not add their travel information. So please make sure that you are doing so. So if there is an emergency, and it's a very serious emergency, what our policy is to review information put out by the State Department as well as International SOS and the Overseas Advisory Council, which is another organization that looks at safety and security overseas, to determine whether we need to change our itinerary or remove a group from a country because of safety concerns. It's not something that I've ever had to do in my time here at LAM, but it is something that we keep on the table for situations that are really serious when we feel that our students, again, safety or health is at risk. So it is always a possibility, but unlikely. I also always like to remind students at this point that there is always the chance that our planned travel may be interrupted, changed, or even canceled due to factors out of the college's control. And this could be for reasons including severe weather, natural disasters, civil unrest, terrorist attacks, epidemics, and other force majeure events. So please, before your groups travel, keep an eye on the news, as well as flight information for especially the New York City area, just to make sure that everything's going smoothly. If you have any questions about, whether something is changing or how, if there's an emergency that comes up last minute, you can always feel free to reach out to me and or to the faculty leaders, and we will, of course, be doing our best also just to keep you proactively updated on this front. If there is a significant change to the program, LAM will do its best to refund you in part or in whole, again, depending on what that change is. It could be a change to the itinerary, it could be a cancellation of the program altogether. But just note that this can be limited because of if the change is caused by a force majeure event, because we don't always get a refund from, say, our travel providers in those cases, but we always try to do our best. Just a reminder as well that you were provided information on travel insurance. This was quite a while ago, so you might need to go back through your email to find it. You can use travel insurance to help you protect funds that you've submitted in the event that your travel plans change or are canceled. And remember that you're responsible for purchasing this on your own if it's something that you would like to purchase. Additionally, as a reminder, if you decide that you need to cancel your participation in the program, the college will not be able to refund your program fee. So this is where travel insurance can come in. So say you got unexpectedly very sick and weren't able to travel. If you had purchased travel insurance, you may be able to get some of your funds back through your insurance. Again, because this is something that you'd purchase individually, I can't necessarily provide a ton of advice or guidance on this front, but if you do have questions, of course, feel free to reach out to me and I will do my best to answer them. So before you depart, some safety best practices. Make sure that you're visiting travel.state.gov and jotting down where the closest American embassy in London is before departure so that you have that information. I would also encourage you to have emergency phone numbers, emails, addresses written down on paper rather than just in your phone, because as we all know, batteries can die, phones can fall in puddles or get stepped on. So paper is a little bit safer for this really important information. This could include my contact information, the address and contact information of your hostel, the address and contact information of the nearest embassy, etc. And always make sure that you are keeping a copy of your International SOS card and health insurance card with you at all times while you're abroad. I also advise that students not carry their passports unless you know that you're needing it. So at your hostel, you will have a locker in your room that you can use to lock up any valuables or things like your passport that you really want to keep safe. You of course need your passport if you're crossing an international border. Sometimes if you're buying expensive merchandise, the store will ask to see proof of ID. So then you would want to have your passport with you as well. But in my experience, the more that you carry your passport, the more likely you are to lose it or leave it behind. And that, of course, we want to avoid at all costs. So again, keeping it in a safe place rather than carrying it can be a good way to go. Make sure that you have multiple copies of your passport and other important documents. You can leave one copy at home in the US, and you can carry a copy with you while you're out and about in your host country rather than carrying your actual passport. I'll also be providing a copy of your passport to our faculty leaders too. Make sure that you are checking in with Professors Keene and Loringer, your faculty leaders, every day. During your free time, you are really free to go out and explore and have the experiences that you want to have, but we do want to make sure that everybody's staying safe. So again, just a quick check-in with Professors Keene and Loringer can really help with that. So that can be by WhatsApp, that can be in person, whatever works best for you. Make sure that somebody knows your plans, where you're going, with whom, for how long, and please use the buddy system. Don't go off on your own. Other students will also likely want to explore, so if you have an idea for somewhere that you want to go, just ask around. I'm sure that other people will want to go with you. If you use Google Maps on your phone, I also suggest downloading an offline map of London before you leave the US. You can do that, and it stores in your phone for I think 30 days. So that means that if for some reason you lose data or you don't have data, you would still have that map, which can really help you get around. And finally, as far as street smarts go, if you do happen to live here in New York or another big city, one great thing to keep in mind is that if you wouldn't do something in New York or another big city, then don't do it abroad. Look at what other people are doing, how they're acting, and do your best to blend in. So again, this sometimes comes in with Americans being louder or more outspoken than other nationalities. And in the UK, you can find that sometimes people act in a very quote-unquote American way, but sometimes they're quite a bit more reserved. So that's, again, depending on the situation and where you are, that's something to observe and try to emulate. Also, try to be confident and assertive. Even if you happen to be lost and you're not really sure where you're going, if you can, just keep going, act like you know what you're doing until you can get to a place where you can figure out, stop and figure out what your next steps need to be. A good place to stop is sometimes in the lobby of a bank. That can be kind of a safe place to stop and get your bearings. Of course, it means that you're not just standing on a street corner looking lost, trying to figure out where you are. Make sure that you are aware of your surroundings at all times, but especially if you're taking money out of an ATM or if you happen to be using a payphone, as well as on public transportation. Mugging and pickpocketing can be more common abroad than it is here, especially here in New York. So just make sure that you are keeping any jewelry, electronics close at hand, and that if you're carrying a handbag with you, that it's has a secure closure and that you're kind of keeping your hand on it, especially again when you're on public transportation. Avoid any crowds or protests, even if they're crowds that are happy. Say a football team wins and a group of people gathers to celebrate. Any big crowd can turn angry and potentially dangerous relatively quickly, so it's usually better just to avoid them altogether. If you do see any suspicious individuals, don't hesitate to report them to local authorities. Just because you're a visitor doesn't mean that you can't kind of spot things that could turn into a bad situation. Check travel advisories through International SOS and the Department of State, and just keep in mind that you are responsible for knowing the local laws in the UK and obeying them. Luckily, there isn't really anything that's too strange or anything that would really be difficult or anything that you particularly need to keep in mind. But if you do break a law in the UK, saying, I'm American, I didn't know, won't be an accepted excuse, unfortunately. So just a little bit about healthcare abroad. So everybody has submitted proof of their health insurance coverage overseas to me. Thank you so much for doing that. I really appreciate it. Again, make sure that you're keeping a copy of your health insurance card on you at all times while you're traveling. And also remember that you are responsible for covering any medical expenses that you might have while you're overseas. So, we don't really expect that you will need to go to the doctor or have any other medical care, but there is always the chance that this could happen. So make sure that you have a way to pay for this if you need to, whether it's an emergency credit card or another method. If you are bringing medication with you, a few things to keep in mind. If you use basic items regularly, it's a good idea to keep them in your carry-on just in case your checked luggage does get lost. So things like ibuprofen, Benadryl, those can be really helpful to have with you, especially since you're going for such a short program. Please remember to leave everything in its original bottle with original labels. I always share the anecdote that I have the terrible habit of keeping my medication all mixed up in a Ziploc baggie, which is not a good way to try to cross an international border. So again, just leave everything in the original bottle. And as I touched on briefly before, some prescription medication might be illegal in the UK. That is not illegal here. So if you are bringing prescription medication with you, please contact International SOS before you depart for the UK. And I would encourage you to do this ASAP so that you can get a good idea of if there are any additional steps, any additional documentation that you need to get from your doctor so that you can bring that medication with you. While you are traveling, you will experience jet lag. If you've never experienced it before, it is honestly pretty unpleasant, but it's something that all international travelers have to deal with, and once you kind of push through it, it's fine. My best advice is to make sure that you're staying hydrated. Often jet lag is exacerbated by dehydration, so that can make you feel even worse. So even though it can be difficult, especially when you're on the plane, make sure that at the airport you are drinking lots of bottled water, that you're bringing water with you onto that plane, and that once you arrive in the UK, you're making sure to continue to drink liquids. Jet lag can sometimes cause a sense of depression, homesickness, anxiety. This is pretty normal, so if you kind of have these feelings, don't get too stressed out about it. There are things that will hopefully get better once you've been able to catch up on some sleep. And they do say that you typically need 1 day of recovery for each time zone that you cross. So since you'll be traveling for 5 days and the time difference between the US and the UK is 5 hours, it does mean that you'll probably be at least a little bit tired for most of the days that you're there. But hopefully by the second or third day, you'll be feeling quite a bit better. As far as alcohol use goes, please abide by the local laws and avoid excessive drinking. This is actually a stereotype that a lot of other countries have about the US, that we drink too much. So please be responsible and professional. As far as swimming goes, you will likely not be swimming at all in the UK, but if you do, please be careful. Lifeguards may not be able to be counted on. Locals may have knowledge about currents and undertows that you don't. If you do find yourself swimming in freshwater, parasites can be an issue, so keep all of those things in mind. As far as bloodborne and fluid-borne diseases, one thing to keep in mind is the saying, if it's wet and it's not yours, don't touch it. So this is probably very common sense, but a good thing to keep in mind nonetheless. On a related note, as far as tattoos and body piercings go, there can be different standards of sanitation abroad. So I know sometimes students will be abroad and they'll be saying to themselves, well, I really want to get a tattoo or a piercing to commemorate this experience. I would strongly encourage you to wait until you return back here to the US to do so. It will still be just as meaningful, but you'll be going somewhere that likely has better standards of sanitation. So study abroad can impact your mental and emotional health. Any travel can do that. Again, jet lag can impact that. Being in a new place with a new group of people can cause that. I always encourage students to be patient and give yourself time to adjust. It is really common for there to be an adjustment period. So again, if you're not feeling 100% yourself when you first arrive, that's completely normal. And again, this can kind of manifest as depression, anxiety, insomnia, lack of appetite. So if you're feeling those things, it's definitely something to be aware of. But I think sometimes personally, recognizing, okay, this is kind of my body reacting to the lack of sleep, and kind of getting adjusted to a new schedule, new food, new people, it will get better. That always helps. Again, there is emotional support counseling available through ISOS. You can always give them a call to access that. But of course, if you're feeling that things are really extreme, or that they're kind of getting worse rather than improving, ask for help. You can always reach out to your faculty leaders. You could email me. We are there to support you, so don't hesitate to let us know. Okay, so here's a summary of the health and safety to-dos that you have on your list. So first and foremost, complete step registration, create your MyTrips account and add your travel details, download the International SOS Assistance app, download WhatsApp, and I'll talk a little bit more about why you're going to do that shortly, to make sure you have WhatsApp on your phone. Call International SOS about any medication, particularly prescription medication that you'll be bringing with you, and make photocopies of your passport and your health insurance card. All right, so a little bit about culture and being an ambassador. So when you travel, you may experience culture shock, and there are many different ways or many different areas that can cause or spark culture shock. One is personal space. So personal space can be very different depending on the individual, of course, but also the culture that they're from, what their expectation is for how close two people talking to each other stand. I always suggest observing other people. So observe UK natives and see how close they stand, and again, try to copy that. And if somebody does get a little bit closer than you expect or stands a little bit further away than you expect, don't be offended. This is likely just a cultural difference. Humor can vary in different cultures. What's funny here in the US might not be funny abroad, and vice versa. And gender roles can also be different. So the way that men and women talk about each other, the way that they interact can be different. Sometimes that can be surprising or shocking or dismaying. But again, typically these are cultural differences. As far as food goes, other countries may not take dietary restrictions and food allergies quite as seriously as we do here in the States. So if you do have dietary restrictions or allergies, please make sure that you are alerting your server as soon as possible, and that it's something that you're kind of reiterating to make sure that your food is meets your needs. Of course, when it comes to eating out, tipping can also be very cultural. Please make sure that you're researching this before you're traveling. I think sometimes when Americans go abroad, we just assume that nobody in other countries tips at all, but this isn't necessarily true. International SOS actually has information about tipping expectations in different countries around the world on their portal website, as well as on their app. So you can always go check out those resources when you're doing that research. So if you are feeling like you're experiencing culture shock, some ways to help you adjust include, first and foremost, being flexible and open-minded. So being open to the experiences that you're having, the people that you're meeting, and not rushing to judge them as good or bad, just letting yourself experience them. Try to avoid thinking things like, we do things better in the US, these people are backwards or old-fashioned, or this is weird. Those are all things that I've heard from students in the past, and I think that they really close you off from fully experiencing things because you've already made a judgment call about what's going on. So if you can keep an open mind, you're more likely to be able to kind of absorb and then down the road reflect on the experiences that you have. Make sure that you're staying busy, participate fully in all activities, keep in touch with friends and family at home, keep your sense of humor, and most of all, take care of yourself. So make sure that you are getting as much sleep as you can, keep drinking water, eat healthy food, all of that good stuff. So as a student traveling abroad, you are taking on the role of being an ambassador. So you're an ambassador for the US, you're especially an ambassador for LAM College, particularly at the visits that you'll be doing. So at London College of Fashion, the different companies you'll be visiting, even the museums that you're going to. And of course, you're representing yourself no matter where you go. So one thing that you'll face as a traveler is the expectations that other people might have of you. So often people abroad will assume that all Americans, again, drink excessively, that we demand special treatment, that we say things like, oh, Americans do everything better. And again, that we're kind of closed-minded. So we might say things like, everything here is weird. So whenever I travel, I always try to keep these stereotypes in mind and then do my best to do the exact opposite, because I really see it as a chance for me to be a good example and to help show other people who maybe haven't interacted with Americans before that America's a big country. There are a lot of people here who have very different personalities and cultures and upbringings, but that we can be respectful travelers as well. As an ambassador, you may get questions from people, sometimes from waiters, cab drivers, even the people at the visits that you're going to, that kind of ask you to speak for the entire United States. And obviously, that can be a huge challenge because you're just one person and we're from a very big country. Sometimes these questions can be a little bit shocking, at least from our perspective. So these are all questions that I've personally gotten before. Things like, why are Americans so ignorant of the world? Why are the police racist in the US? Why are you always trying to force your form of government on everyone else? And my personal favorite, do you own a gun? And as you can probably tell, a lot of things are based on what they likely see in the media about the United States. So this can be a really great opportunity for exchange and for learning. Oftentimes people don't ask these questions to be aggressive. They genuinely want to know your perspective as an American. But if you are, if you find yourself running into somebody who seems like they're asking these questions just so that they can pick a fight, it's not your responsibility to, change their mind about anything or to keep yourself in a situation that makes you uncomfortable. So you can always feel free to change the subject or to even walk away if necessary. I strongly suggest before traveling that you are doing a little bit of research so that you're prepared. So research the host country and city's recent history, brush up on current world and American news, research American foreign policies, especially as they might impact the UK, and then think about some comparisons between the US and the host country. Okay, so now moving into the specifics of your program and the visits. So I would strongly suggest bringing 2 professional dress outfits for the days when you will be at London College of Fashion and completing the industry visits. These don't need to be pantsuits necessarily, but nice pants, I would say not jeans, definitely not ripped, and a nice blouse is just fine. Perhaps a shirt and a blazer, that would be great. Keep in mind that on these days you will still be walking quite a bit, so you should plan to bring comfortable shoes so that you're ready to do so. We also expect that all students will be respectful and attentive to the speakers. So the London College of Fashion staff, as well as the companies that you'll be visiting, are volunteering their time to host us. So we really want to make sure that we're showing our appreciation. And again, completely understand that this can be a challenge if you're feeling tired from jet lag, but please push through and be respectful of those speakers. And again, just always keep in mind the nature of the visit. So this is a learning experience. It's not necessarily a time to network for your personal gain. And again, please be appreciative of the companies and individuals who are volunteering their time to speak with us. And then again, finally, always remember you're representing yourself, LIM, and the US. So as far as student expectations go, we expect that everyone is fully participating in all activities, that you're working to develop cultural awareness and cultural sensitivity, that you're engaging with The curriculum and learning objectives, so even though this is not part of a formal course, there are still many opportunities for you to learn, so that we're expecting that you're taking advantage of that. That you're considering the effect of your actions on the entire group and the local context. So, traveling as a group can often mean that you're kind of compromising or waiting for other people when you yourself are ready to go, things like that. So please be patient, and again, please consider that you're traveling as a larger group. And finally, you are also expected to comply with all LIM college policies. On the other hand, we also have faculty expectations. So the two faculty, we expect that they are going to seek to foster transparency, student buy-in, and collaboration. So again, it's a two-way street between the students and the faculty as well. If there are any behavioral issues, which I don't expect that there will be, the process is that there's first a verbal intervention from one or both of the faculty members discussing what the issue is and asking the student to correct that issue. If they do not correct the issue, then a formal written intervention gets sent to me, and that gets passed to the provost of the college. And then finally, if the behavior continues, then the student will be returned back to the United States immediately and will need to cover the cost of departing the program early. If, of course, a more serious issue comes up, then one or more of these steps may be skipped, including just sending the student directly home. Again, extremely uncommon, and I don't expect that there will be any issues, but it is good to keep in mind that this is the process. Okay, so a little bit about logistics of your program. So please make sure that you are reviewing your itinerary, asking if you have any questions, and keeping a copy with you at all times. I personally like to have both a hard copy and a digital copy. A hard copy to carry with me, a digital copy on my phone, but it's up to you. I will be sending you the itinerary as soon as you confirm with me that you have watched this presentation. So the sooner that you watch this, the sooner that I'll be able to send you that itinerary. Please, again, download WhatsApp by Monday, March 4th, as the group will be using WhatsApp as the means of communication. So Professors Keene and Loringer will add you to a group chat so that you can communicate easily. And then finally, you'll be meeting at 7 p.m. on Friday, March 8th at the departures level of Terminal 7 of JFK Airport here in New York. Make sure that you're keeping an eye on the WhatsApp chat for updates from Professors Keene and Loringer on where to meet them. And please do not be late. The group will need to check in without you if you are late. So if, no matter where you're traveling from to get to JFK, please make sure that you are allowing plenty of time to get to the airport so that you don't miss the group. Again, we would absolutely hate to leave you behind if you were late, but unfortunately, if students are late, the rest of the group will need to check in without them. So again, meet no later than 7 p.m. on Friday, March 8th at the departures level of Terminal 7 at JFK. If you haven't met Professors Keene and Loringer before, here are photos of them to help you find them at the airport. You should keep an eye out for them. And again, they'll also be sending an update through the WhatsApp chat to help you find them once you do get to the airport. So more practical matters again. What should I bring? So packing tips. The most important thing to remember when you're packing is that you must be able to maneuver all of your luggage yourself. There will not be, assistance at the airport when you're going through security. There will not be assistance to get your carry-on up into the overhead bins. And once you arrive in the UK and you get your checked luggage back, you'll need to be able to maneuver both your checked bag and your carry-on bag and your personal item if you choose to bring all three. So please do some tests, as silly as it sounds, with your luggage before you depart for the airport to make sure that you can do so. You'll be flying on British Airways, and they have the following baggage restrictions. They allow one personal item, So this is small. It should be no larger than 40 centimeters by 30 centimeters by 15 centimeters. And it is typically something like a briefcase, a handbag or small purse, a laptop bag, or a camera bag. So I've had students before who've tried to bring like a full duffel bag as their personal item, which does not fly, and the airport will require that you pay for that if you do so. So please make sure that this is small. You also get one carry-on item, which can be no larger than 23 kilograms and no bigger than 56 centimeters by 45 centimeters by 25 centimeters. Again, with the carry-on bag, keep in mind that it needs to be of a weight that you yourself are able to lift up into the overhead bins and then back down again at the end of your flights. And also that these dimensions need to include the handles, pockets, and wheels. And airlines are pretty strict about carry-on baggage sizes these days, so that's an important thing to keep in mind. And then finally, you do have one checked bag if you would like to use it. Again, this can be a maximum of 23 kilograms and a maximum size of 158 centimeters. So this includes the height, width, and length, again, including handles, pockets, and wheels. So basically, you would measure the 3 dimensions of your checked bag, and if you added them up and they were less than 158 centimeters, then your bag is good to go. If they are more than 158 centimeters, then it is too large. So again, you do have all 3 of these bags. My personal suggestion might be to just bring a carry-on bag. Since your program is relatively short, that should be more than enough space for your clothes and other things that you're bringing, but it's completely up to you, whatever you feel most comfortable with. If your items are too large, too heavy, you bring too many things with you, you may be charged $100 per flight or more to bring those bags. So please, please, please make sure that you're checking this carefully before you're leaving your house to head to the airport. When you are packing, I suggest researching the style and weather in your host country. So things like, are sweatpants appropriate, jeans, shorts, tank tops, baseball hats? I would not suggest shorts and tank tops for London in March, but again, up to you. I also personally really strongly suggest clothes that work well for layering because weather can change pretty drastically from one day to the next, or even from the morning to the afternoon. That can mean that you're really prepared for a whole bunch of different possibilities. And again, make sure that you have at least 2 professional outfits for your industry visits. But even for the days where you are completing, say, museum visits or other cultural visits, you want to make sure that your clothing is school appropriate. So no obscene logos. Please limit, midriff visibility, things like that. I also suggest when you're packing that you lay everything out that you think that you'll need on your bed and then remove approximately half. Everybody tends to overpack. I have never worked with a student who said, you know what, I didn't pack enough. So keeping that in mind can really help you keep your packing to a reasonable level. And again, I also would recommend leaving space and weight in your suitcases so that you have room for any purchases that you want to make abroad. Make sure that you are packing the following items in your carry-on, so they should not go into a checked bag. Photocopies of your passport, as well as, of course, your passport itself. Any prescription medication that you take. Again, don't forget to check with International SOS before you pack that. Extra contacts or prescription glasses. If you are bringing a large bottle of extra contact solution, that may need to go in your checked baggage, depending on the size of the bottle. And at least 1 change of clothes should go into your carry-on because there is always the risk that your checked luggage could get lost. Some must-have items to bring with you include a padlock for the locker in your hostel room. And note that if you are bringing a big checked bag, it might not fit into the locker, but your room will also lock, and you're rooming with only other LAM students, no strangers. So the locker should be sufficient for any valuable personal items that you want to keep in there. But you should, again, bring a padlock, or you should be able to purchase a padlock from the hostel front desk as well. I suggest bringing flip-flops for the hostel shower, as well as granola bars for snacks between meals. So, if you're feeling peckish, the group. It may be a long day of visits and walking. Having a granola bar on hand can be really helpful. Comfortable walking shoes. Again, you'll be walking quite a bit, so you do want to make sure that you have shoes that are appropriate for that. I suggest bringing a small umbrella, perhaps a waterproof jacket, small toiletries, a small first aid kit, and then a journal to record your experiences if you'd like. Things that you should avoid bringing include expensive jewelry, any electronics you don't need, too many clothes, uncomfortable or impractical shoes, and any handbags that don't close securely. So as far as money goes, you will want to call your bank before you depart, because you'll need to put a travel notice on any debit or credit cards that you want to use while you're abroad. If you don't do this, your bank may flag them when you try to use them because they'll think that they've been stolen and they're being used by somebody overseas. When you talk to your bank, it's also a good idea to ask about foreign transaction fees. These can really add up. So if you're planning on using your debit and or credit card to either get money out at ATMs or to make purchases, that's definitely something that you want to be aware of. I suggest bringing a small amount of cash, British pounds, with you. You'll need to exchange money at your bank prior to your departure. It can take a few days for your bank to order currency, so just make sure that this is not something you're trying to do in the car on your way to the airport. You'll want to do it before you get there. Once you're abroad, I definitely suggest avoiding exchanging money at places like hotels, airports, restaurants, and retail stores because they can often charge pretty high fees. But it can be pretty cost effective to take out cash at an ATM if you need cash rather than using a credit or debit card for every transaction. And again, if you do have high international transaction fees, using cash can be more cost effective than using a card. And finally, make sure that you do have more than one source of money. So again, I'll typically bring cash with a debit card so that I can get more out if necessary, and then I'll have a backup credit card as well. So just in case something gets lost, you do have that backup available. As far as electronics and email go, as you might be aware, the UK uses a different voltage and different shaped electrical plugs than we do here in the US. So this means that you won't be able to use most of your electronics abroad without purchasing additional items to help them work overseas. So two common things that you can purchase to help you do so are a converter and an adapter. So a converter changes the voltage. It's usually really heavy, it's usually quite expensive, and I typically advise that you avoid them altogether because they don't always work. So even after carrying them in your luggage and paying for them, they might still not help you. However, an adapter is slightly different. It just changes the shape of your plug. So it's small, it's light, it has nothing to do with the voltage, and it should be everything that you need for your computer and your phone. So typically computer chargers and phone chargers are already dual voltage. You can usually look on the plug itself just to double check that it is. So you wouldn't need to worry about changing the voltage, you would just need to worry about changing the plug for those electronics. So you can purchase adapters really easily online. I usually, just get mine on Amazon. And again, they should be relatively affordable. As far as cell phones go, you can contact your current phone service provider to ask them about available international calling, text, and or data plans. Depending on your plan and your company, these can vary in price. What some students do rather than getting a specific plan is using their US phone on airplane mode the whole time that they're abroad and then just accessing Wi-Fi when it's available to use messaging and calling apps. It's totally up to you. I personally like having at least data available on my phone while I'm traveling internationally, but again, completely depends on your individual scenario. As far as hair dryers and straighteners go, I would advise you to avoid bringing dual voltage options. They typically don't work. They'll often blow out circuits, which can be pretty embarrassing. I've done it myself. You can borrow a hair dryer from the hostel. You need to put down a deposit, or you could always buy one when you arrive in country. Sometimes students will, go in between 3 or 4 of them to split one. Or you can just go out, of course, go without for the days that you're there. If you're thinking about taking your computer, keep in mind that it won't be necessary unless you're taking classes online while you're abroad. And do keep in mind that you're required to keep up with any schoolwork you do have while you're traveling overseas. So you want to make sure that you're staying on top of that. And please make sure that you check your LIM email occasionally while you're traveling. If there are any updates that I need to get to you, that's where I'll be reaching out. When you return to the US, some kind of general tips. Give yourself time to process the experience that you've had. If you've kept a journal, I sometimes find it helpful to continue journaling for the next 3 or 4 days after I get back, because sometimes I have thoughts or reflections at that time that I didn't have right when I returned. Stay in contact with the friends and faculty that you traveled with. If you're interested in doing so, I also will typically ask for help with upcoming info sessions, study abroad fairs, things like that, which can be a great place for you to talk about your experience with students who are interested in going overseas. And make sure that you speak with your career coach for help with adding the study abroad experience to your resume, and also for tips on how to speak about it effectively in interviews. Okay, last little piece. So you're probably familiar with the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, or FERPA. This is a law that states that your educational record is private. So I'm not allowed to speak about your educational record, including study abroad, with anybody except for you. If you are interested in allowing me to speak with anybody else, you can request a release form from the registrar. You need to email them from your student email account, and they're at registrar@limcollege.edu. And that would be the only way that I'd be able to speak with people like parents, guardians, family, significant others. The only exception is if there is an emergency. In the case of an emergency, I can speak to your family. And then finally, you may also want to consider giving power of attorney to a family member who's going to be here in the US, just in case you have any issues with your bank while you're abroad. It can be really helpful to have somebody here who is able to speak to your bank and help you with that. So that is everything that I have. I hope that you found this helpful and useful. Of course, if you have any questions at all, please send me an email. I'm more than happy to help. And I am really excited to hear all about your experiences in London. I think it's going to be a fantastic time. Speak soon. Thanks.